The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
Valley, hooey Hollywood, where any office boy or young mechanic can be a panic with just a good-looking fan. And any barmaid can be a star maid if she dances with or without a plan. Hooray for Hollywood, where you're terrific if you're even good, where anyone at all from Shirley Temple to Amy Semple is equally understood. Go out and try your luck.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting premiere podcast. Damn you, Hollywyood. And here's your host, Robert Winfree. Yay!
Hey, everybody.
Forgot my hand motions on that one.
You got lost there.
Yeah.
Look, let's take it from the top. And if you screw up again, you're fired. You really should not struggle with the choreography. We've done it how many times?
Once more again with feeling.
Wait, Robert, you've actually got the ability to fire him?
Sort of. It's complicated. There's some very specific legal wrangling that goes into that, but...
Well, that's the second time that phrase has entered my life today.
What legal wrangling?
No, it's complicated.
Well, I meant it in jest, so take that for what it's worth. Well, ladies and gentlemen, tonight, welcome to the new mostly home of Damn You Hollywood on Mondays. You could be doing a lot of stuff Monday evening. You're here, and we're grateful for you. Tonight, we are talking about
our continuing journey in the death of film.
No, film's been dead for a while now. We've all kind of accepted it. We're dealing with
the growing evidence of superhero fatigue and marketing campaign that will probably be studied by college courses in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and hit the line so that I can do my part, please.
Okay. Well, tonight we're Mark is here. Hi, Mark. How are you?
Hi.
Also joining us is Alexis Hejna. Alexis, welcome.
How's it going?
And yeah, we're talking about Blue Beetle, which is
yes, Blue Beetle is a 2023 American superhero film based on DC propriety, sir. I demand we have propriety.
Mark's Wikipedia read does need to be at the top.
Yes, there's an order to which we do this. I can at least one thing in my life have order.
Well,
depends. Is this an OCD thing or what?
As a profoundly, weirdly enough, as a profoundly ordered individual, yes, I approve.
Thank you. Blue Beetle is a 2023 American superhero film.
You're the one. Hang on, you're the one who disrupted this last week with a list. So are we going to do that every week? Is the list thing going to become a regular thing? Or
I said again, the list was because I didn't want to do.
All right.
Here's the problem. What's your favorite thing? And then people go like, I've never done this before. No one's ever asked me a question. Someone asked me about my thoughts, and then they hem and they haw, and then they don't, and then they take some 20 minutes to answer the question, or everyone gives the same answer. And I'm like, I'm not doing this shit tonight. And that's how we ended up on a list.
All right. Okay, fair enough.
Blue Beetle, for the third time, is a 2023 American superhero film based on DC Comics character Jaime Reyes. Blue Beetle, produced by DC Studios and the Safran Company. The film was directed by Ángel Manuel Soto and written by Gareth Dunnet-Alcocer. It is the 14th installment of the DC Extended Universe. The film stars the kid from Cobra Kai.
Wait. I'm sorry. Rewind.
No.
Did you say this was the 14th of these things?
Yes, the 14th installment of the DC Extended Universe.
I could name you 4, maybe, and I know we've reviewed most of them. What a dumpster fire.
speaking of lists, I should probably pull that list up. Hang on. The DC
Don't worry
extended.
about it. Just keep going.
The DC, no, Man of Steel, BVS, Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, Justice League, Aquaman, Shazam. We're up to 7 now. Birds of Prey, 84. They're counting Zack Snyder's Justice League, so that makes 10. The Suicide Squad's 11. Black Adam is 12. Shazam, Fury of the Gods is 13. The Flash is 14. And yeah,
So
Blue Beetle.
15.
Yep. Again, if you take Zack Snyder's Justice League out of there because it's double,
What?
then we're up to 14 original films.
That is, if I may quote the great Ian Malcolm, that is one big pile of shit.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, stars Han Solo, or the kid from Cobra Kai, as Jaime Reyes.
I actually got the pronunciation downloaded here. It is Xolo Maridueña.
Alongside Adriana Barraza, Damián Alcázar, Elpidia Carrillo, which I learned today by watching The Critical Drinker, is the broad from Predator.
That was a blast from the past.
I know, right?
Bruna Marquezine, Raoul Max Trujillo, Susan Sarandon, and George Lopez. All right.
I think it's Jorge, Mark. Are we Jorge Lopez?
No, it's George. He's a George.
I know. I'm just messing with you.
Yeah, apologies in advance if we offend anyone. We are just way too freaking white to get these pronunciations correct.
Speak for yourself, Honky. I'm just mildly racist.
Look, Mark can do the 57 iterations of LaShandra. He can't do anything Asian or anything Hispanic to save his life. I get what are the two that I get right more often than not?
You get the Portuguese.
No. Like no, I mean names. But like I get some pronunciation okay. I know I've picked up enough like secondhand Portuguese. I don't think it counts anymore. I do like Russian and Eastern European stuff pretty well first try.
Mm-hmm.
And I've actually become okay at certain more Japanese than Chinese, because there's a couple of flares that most people miss, and I've got a little handle on that.
So one of the things that has been coming up with the Blue Beetle movie that we're going to be talking about tonight is we are in the mists, as you will, the dregs of superhero fatigue. And
oh boy, are we.
The Critical Drinker dropped a video today, and he was mostly kind to the Blue Beetle movie, but he did say that this is one of those movies that might be too little too late, because while it was perfectly serviceable and is right in line with some of the more competent superhero movies of the last 20 years, it is also feeling like it is way after the bloom has fallen off the rose of superhero movies. So let me throw it over to you, Alexis. What do you think about the idea of superhero fatigue? You know, because here's how I'll set you up here. I don't feel like superhero fatigue is a real thing as such. I do feel like people thought like we're riding the wave of superhero movies as if superhero movies in and of themselves are what sell the product. What sold Marvel was this big story that ended in a giant fuck all ending, and people were able, and it was told competently, it was told fluidly, and people were able to follow, and it built and built and built, and people were very excited to see how it was going to end in this giant finale that was Endgame. No other situation with comic book movies has ever replicated that. And so I think superhero movies are doing as good as superhero movies have ever done, by and large, give or take. However, that big $1 billion wave is gone because the big $1 billion wave story isn't happening. What do you think?
There is the issue of the story, but there's also just the issue that superhero films unfortunately become very carbon cut and copy and paste.
Big blue laser in the sky.
Yeah, pretty much.
Faceless CGI goons, sky laser, evil billionaire.
Hell, we'll get into it, but this movie is pretty much someone just took Ant-Man and Iron Man and smushed them together. And
pretty close.
And again, we'll get into this. I like this movie. I really did. I walked out. I had enjoyed it. But it doesn't offer anything new. We were talking before the show started that a few months ago, people were saying, nope, nope, see, superhero fatigue isn't a thing because Guardians of the Galaxy 3 came out and that did really well. And we gave it a positive review and we all really liked it for the most part. But it's because Guardians of the Galaxy 3 knew how to mix it up and do something a little bit different. We are seeing way too many superhero movies where it's the exact same formula over and over and over and over, and it's driving us kind of nuts.
See,
I argue that...
let me jump in real quick. See, my problem with that argument is that it ignores a very, very big issue here that Robert and I have talked about a zillion times. We've talked about it, Alexis as well, and that is everything changes after 2019. Everything changes after COVID and the lockdowns. The entire movie industry and the movie-going public is trained differently. So they're blaming it on, you're looking at this and you're like, oh, it's the same old stuff, and that's what's driving people away. But I'm thinking, here's my problem with that. Here's essentially my counter. People go see the same old stuff all the time. The same old stuff is comforting. A couple of years ago, and I actually just rewatched some of this, some of our TikTok on this. We were talking about Ghostbusters, and I was like, and you and I were in a fist fight over it because it was like, yay, all the familiar stuff. And I'm like, ugh, all the familiar stuff. Can't we do anything new here? But, Ghostbusters did well. Time and time again on this show, we have talked about how people gravitate towards the familiar. I don't think it's fatigue. I don't think it's the familiar. I absolutely think that it is incredibly difficult to cut through the noise without, triggering, a far negative response than this conversation warrants. Barbie is one of those movies that truly stood apart from almost anything else that was out there. As did Oppenheimer, as a matter of fact, which is why this is such a phenomena. But you have, in fact, two movies that were so different. They cut through the morass of what was out there and created an event experience that draws people to the movie theaters. Not every movie is able to do this. You have perfectly good, perfectly serviceable movies that in a vacuum, people would be interested in and enjoy and watch. You say you like this movie. Yeah, everyone likes this movie. We'll get to it later on, but it's got a high critical score and it's got a high audience score. The theater that I saw it in, everyone was like cheering and laughing, and they were having someone actually yelled out at the end of the movies. And this was like 10 o'clock on a Sunday night. Like, did everyone have a good time? Woo! I was like, Jesus, where am I at a rally? I brought a 9 and a 12-year-old to it, and they thought it was fantastic. Like, this is a crowd-pleasing, happy movie.
Saw it in a completely empty theater, which is my preferred viewing experience.
You always go to I'm sorry, you do not get to argue about the whole completely empty thing because you always go to matinees.
For possible.
In the middle of a work week in Utah.
Yeah, sorry, that the logic does not work that way, okay? The formula does not hold up.
So I'll wrap up my point, and then you guys can counter it or weigh in. But I honestly don't think there's this malaise of disinterest in superhero movies. I absolutely think that it's a question of people are only going to go to the movies maybe every couple of weeks, if that. And it really has to be a happening for them to go. Everything else, they're willing to wait 4 weeks, a couple of weeks, 2 weeks, 20 minutes for it to show up on PVOD or a streaming service.
So you think?
And I think
I'm saying you're
that's
saying
what
that
it is.
You're saying that the amount that we have on streaming service is sating the general public to the point that they no longer feel the appeal to go to the movies.
Yeah. No, look, I talk to a lot of people all the time who do not want to leave their fucking house. They're not interested in the $50 to $100 movie experience. And if they are, that's, like I said, it's an event. That is a night out that they're not doing again for another 6 to 8 weeks. And they're willing to drop some money, but they're not going to do it again. So yeah. So most people, like a lot of the guys that I work with, they have really nice TV and sound systems in their homes, and they are perfectly content. Nothing is worth going to the movies for. Everything is worth waiting for it to show up on Disney Plus, and then they can put it on their giant sound system at home, and they're perfectly happy. And they don't have to deal with assholes in the theater. And I think that's what happened here with Blue Beetle. I think people looked at that and go, "This is fine. I can wait for this to come on Disney Plus," not knowing that it's not a Disney movie, but that's who we're dealing with here.
Well, it'll come on Max.
I know.
Well, look, here's kind of my general counter to that. My stance on this has been for a long time that superhero fatigue is real. It's just not impermeable. you can get through the morass of the fatigue with the right movie, and you need a quality movie that's going to entice people. And Guardians 3 more or less did that. Because, look, let's compare and contrast, right? Guardians 3 did it, Ant-Man didn't. And if you want another example of why I think this is real, we just take a minute and appreciate the reality of something for a second. We've been dealing with 3 to 4 Marvel movies a year, every year, for the last what?
Not including Disney Plus releases.
Not including the TV shows, movies. 4 or so a year for what, 6-7 years?
Yeah, I would say it was phase 3 when they started dropping 3 or 4 a year.
I mean,
that doesn't count the Sony drops that were
no, it doesn't. I'm just talking Marvel. To say nothing of against Sony, to say nothing of DC trying to of Warner Brothers throwing a few of these out there, to say nothing of all the other studios who are looking at, okay, so what's a third-party independent comic we can pick up for cheap and throw another superhero movie out there.
Right.
Everybody and their dog got in on this, and for about 10 years, that's been dude, what have we talked about forever? It's been, the marketplace has been dominated by superhero flicks or Disney live-action remakes, and that anything else is an aberration in the data. It's not that they don't exist, but they're blips. That's what dominates. You do enough of that, and people, especially when everything that you do is the same, people get sick of it. I mean, look, I'll spoil part of my craft review for this movie. You know the biggest thing against this movie? I've seen it before. I've seen it a lot, and I've seen it a lot recently.
Okay, let's talk about Westerns for a moment. People still go see Westerns. They were still making Westerns.
People take the wrong you take the wrong lesson from this.
It's not the wrong lesson, Robert.
It is the wrong lesson.
Because that was a genre that existed for a long time and continues to exist today. I think people, like I said, like to see superhero movies. The problem, I'm going to keep going back to this, the problem, and it's not that I just completely discredit your point, because I think there's validity to, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot they're doing different with comic book movies. I think that's a valid argument, but it's right up there with, there isn't enough of a good reason to go to the movies anymore.
Okay, look, people make the comparison between comic movies and the Western, and it's not a good comparison. And it's an easy comparison to make because, they're genres. Let's compare genres. Comic book movies are not necessarily a genre in the way that a Western is. Comic book movies are a... they're not a genre of story. They're a style of film at this point. And there's a wild difference between those 2 points.
I'd say that's a fair argument, since this good comic book movie can use other genres. Lord knows how many times we talked about Captain America and the Winter Soldier, that it's a comic book movie, but you wouldn't call it a comic book movie. You'd probably call it more like a spy thriller.
Yeah, we've had Western comic book movies. We've had, but that, so...
Hang on, let me give you the appropriate comparison. And it'll tell you, it'll show like why we're going to hit where we've kind of hit the point we've hit. The more accurate comparison to the comic book movie, if you want to go back to around that same time period when Westerns were kind of everywhere. Westerns were everywhere because they were cheap. And most people, you could get the sets fairly easily. Most people knew what they were doing on horseback. You could recycle costumes. You could change enough about, again, a sound stage fairly easily to make it different, but also samely enough to invoke some good feelings about it. And you needed some really, you have talented directors that could use landscape, and the rest of them shot on soundstage with backdrops. That's why Westerns gained prominence more than anything else. Comic book movies ain't cheap. What we're looking at, the modern comic book movie is more in touch with the like 60s and 70s roadshow. The big, like...
Robert Frost.
That was you, not me. Let me repeat that in case that was on mine, but I think that was on yours. But the modern comic book movie has more in common with the Roadshow from Hollywood era, like those big, like 4-hour epics that had intermissions built into them. You know, your Cleopatras, your Spartacus, your Caesars, your those movies. The original Ben-Hur, like that's a more appropriate comparison. And what happened to those movies? Why did they die? Did they stop being quality? No, you can still find good ones, but they became cost prohibitive. Spoiler alert on most superhero movies these days. And people kind of got tired of that style. They got tired of the self-indulgence. They got tired of the time commitment. They just kind of got burned out on it. Well, fast forward to 2023. What do we have? We have a style of filmmaking that is heavy on CGI. Most of these are not getting shorter. That require a lot more of you. I mean, how many times did we say this about the Marvels, Mark? To understand what's going on in that movie, to buy into that movie, Captain Marvel, WandaVision, Ms. Marvel, Secret Invasion.
Okay, so let's talk about that term superhero fatigue, because it almost sounds like you're talking about two different things. When most people say superhero fatigue, it's there's too many movies and they're all the same and we don't like it. I'm bored of this. What you're talking about, using the same phrase but a different meaning, is that in order to enjoy one of these movies, you have to have seen everything and read everything. They're trying to create these immersive experiences with different angles at getting at the story, and people don't have the time or the interest in that. The kinds of people that watch, I mean, look at Star Wars, you know, or even better, like Disney people who like hyper focus on Disney. They can tell you where all the mouse ears are in the park. They've seen every movie. They know all the trivia. But we're talking about a very select niche group of people here who are that dedicated to that particular thing that they have that level of detail. The expectation that the average person trying to, go to work, take care of their family, pay their bills, etc., has enough time and interest to follow every single piece of every single part of the story in the Marvel universe is absolutely ludicrous. They got away with it once, but they got away with it with 2 to 4 films a year for for about a decade.
And the other thing about that, they very quickly learned that no one cares about the TV.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like they thought that they could continue this, and if they add TV, people will follow them. And they were like, no, people are not. People look. It's funny because we're in this little like review bubble, where we like to talk about film and we dig into the weeds of film and all of that. But we are also a niche group of people. Most people do not have this level of interest or dedication to it. I want to transition here real quick so we can move this on, because you talk about what could they have done to differentiate Blue Beetle so that it breaks through the noise and draws a crowd. What would have made it happening? And it's funny because we talked about Flamin' Hot not that long ago, and Flamin' Hot was about the guy that allegedly created the Flamin' Hot Cheeto. And one of the things we said about that movie was how they really, they went for the ethnic on that one. And they were going
to the point of caricature almost.
Yeah, almost to the point of caricature. And they had an opportunity here, Alexis, to do that with Blue Beetle. And they certainly did it in the craft, but then completely whiffed on the marketing.
That they did. For the record, though, I do want to go back to one thing you pointed out. I think all of us are right. I think that this is a component of all three of our arguments. And Mark, they're pointing in the right direction at the time. I think there is something to be said about people not going to the theaters, not because of superhero fatigue, but if you actually do look at our box office numbers, most movies are not pulling in anywhere near what they would have pre-2019.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
last component on this to that point. Everything's gone up except wages.
Yeah, well, that's only been going on since the 70s.
We're just in like a spike for that over the last, what do you say, administration, give or take?
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, you guys gave a positive review to Mission Impossible, right?
Nah, we thought it was okay.
Okay. Well, most reviews said it was pretty good, but let me put it this way. It may not have made as much as they thought it would have, but I don't think it should have tanked as much as it did.
Well, one of the things that I think we're learning in the emergent box office, if you want to do a part 1 and part 2, your part 1 better stand on its own.
Yeah, I've talked about that with Lord of the Rings, where certainly these were interconnected stories. They were, 3 parts to an overall story, but any one of those movies more or less could have stood on its own.
And sort of to that point also, I mean, dude, I was on it. I was one of the people pissed off about this. Spider-Verse. Dropped the ball on that hard. Just really hard.
They actually advertised early on before that movie. Okay, that movie was supposed to come out in October of last year. I remember because it was originally supposed to come out on my birthday, and they were advertising it then as part 1. When they delayed it, then they nixed the part 1.
And I'm very grateful that I said this on our review. Like, I'm grateful I had a reviewer spoiled that it was part 1 going into it for me, because otherwise I would have been. The inability to come out of a movie with anything approximating closure is a real downer. And I mean, even if you're setting up other parts, you can close a narrative arc before moving on to the next one, and it didn't even do that. But that's I think one of the reviews I saw of that one likened it to, okay, so if we cut A New Hope right as everyone charges out to stop the Death Star. And you're not wrong.
All right, so hit the marketing real quick, Alexis, so that we can finish up the segment and move on.
That's just something I've been struggling to understand, because it is apparently obvious that Warner Brothers sabotaged Blue Beetle. They shot the marketing for this movie in the foot. It's weird because in the last few weeks
they came this thing out to die. Just shoved it off a cliff.
Now, in the last few weeks, we've seen a lot of marketing for this, but it's only been in the last few weeks. If you had gone up to the first week of August without knowing that another superhero film was coming out, you would have been in the majority, unless you're, big pop culture nerds like us who pay attention to this useless shit. But I said earlier in the year that I felt that Warner Brothers and Disney, for that matter, had completely stripped their marketing departments, because it was so obvious they were not pushing movies and TV shows the way they were. And then Barbie comes out, and Barbie is, got a huge marketing campaign. So it's like, okay, no, they still have it. And then, but then we also had The Flash, which you guys reviewed without me. And thank you for, taking the bullets. Appreciate
Not
it.
the first grenade we've jumped on, nor the last.
I'm just trying to understand this. Warner Brothers nixes Batgirl, shoots the marketing for this movie in the foot, but puts everything into The Flash, despite Ezra Miller committing career suicide as he did.
Well, a couple of things. One, I think if you look at the pantheon of DC characters, if they I would imagine the executives were like, okay, well, what's B team after Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and someone probably went Green Lantern, Flash, Martian Manhunter, or some shit. And it's like, okay, well, where's Blue Beetle in the lineup? And it's like, like F level, I'm sure
pretty solidly D.
Well, this version of Blue Beetle is more well known as part of the Teen Titans now.
I got asked that question. So I went with my kids and my girlfriend to go see Blue Beetle last night. And there was a big argument in the car about why, and we'll talk about this with the craft, but why they brought up Ted Kord and then he wasn't in the movie. And one of the complaints of someone in that car was basically like, if they were going to address Ted Kord should have been in the movie, or they should have started with Ted Kord and not have started with Reyes. And I was like, well, you're also not a 40-year-old, bearded comic book fan. Yes. For that audience, sure, Ted Kord would have worked. But for most people the last 20 years, the Blue Beetle they know is the Hispanic kid, Jaime Reyes. So, it would make sense to go with just like they did with Stargirl. And I actually made that point in the car. Like, you're not going to go with the original Star Man or whatever the hell his name was. You're gonna go with the younger, sleeker, sexier model that the kids can identify with. You go with, you know, the cheeky girl, Star Girl. Same thing with Blue Beetle. You go with the Blue Beetle everyone knows from like Teen Titans and shit. So like that argument in my car befuddled me because it totally made sense to me. But they were like, they should have even had Ted Kord in there then. I guess
What they shouldn't have done was try to pass Kord off as a Brazilian surname.
Okay, well,
I was under the impression that Kord's wife was Brazilian.
Yeah,
not if his daughter is.
Okay, moving on. My point is,
like I said, I'm just trying to understand this. Why is the Flash the hill that Warner Brothers wanted to die on?
Explain that, like, so to go back a second, they put the Batgirl movie on HBO Max. And it's supposed to be a smaller, more ethnic movie where they figure they'll have the audience for it because an audience more accepting of non-white, non-male superheroes is probably going to watch on TV than go to the theater. And then there's the merger that happens, and out of the merger comes, we're not doing anything with HBO Max anymore. In fact, we're not even going to call it that. And so they pull Batgirl and they say, well, we can't put this piece of garbage in theaters. No one will go see it. So that's why it got killed. And it was, I guess, cheaper to kill it than it was to put it out there. With the Flash, I mean, the Flash was always going to, you know, one of their, the Flash was always going to be one of their big pillar DC Justice League movies. That's what it had been all along. Plus, you had Michael Keaton in there. Plus, they were doing all of the stuff they thought was going to be gangbusters. You know, that Robert talked about being ghoulish. You know, having Christopher Reeve and Nicolas Cage and all of that in there. George Reeves. So there was a lot going into that they were like, this is the stuff people like. It's not so much like this is the hill we're going to die on. This has got all the stuff people like, they thought. So this is what we're going to put all of our energy into.
Boy, did they bet on the wrong horse.
They certainly did, Johnny. And then here's the other problem. Blue Beetle was also supposed to be an HBO Max movie. This also got murdered in the merger. They were like, no, nothing goes to HBO Max. So this thing's probably... They had to retool was essentially a made-for-TV movie into something for the big screen, which I think is why you threw the word aggressively mid out there. I think it was just that's half the problem. Again, going all the way back to the beginning of this argument, and then we should probably move this on unless anyone's got a last word that hasn't been said before. You know, when you think about, like, why is this so familiar? Why is this so generic? Probably because this wasn't meant to be seen on the big screen. They were doing their best to shine up a turd that they were going to throw on television to get HBO Max subscribers. And this is the best we could come up with without doing the Indiana Jones budget. Alexis, last words, and then we're going to move on.
I would not call this movie a turd by any stretch of the imagination.
In the grand scheme of things.
I still wouldn't. Sorry, I'm disagreeing.
If you're spending $100+ million on this and it's not going to come close to making that back, you'd call it that.
Okay, fine. So it's an argument on syntax on what you define as a turd. Good to know. Sorry, Warner Brothers is just... David Zaslav specifically has made some really, really weird choices since taking over a WB.
I'm not going to argue with you there. There's let's kill everything in the animation. I know where you're going with this. Let's kill everything in the animation department except Velma, which nobody watched and everyone hated.
Like I said, Mindy Kaling's lawyer must have netted her one hell of a clause on that contract.
Away, there wasn't like a 2-season clause in there. That's ironclad.
No, there wasn't just a 2-season clause. There was a you cut this and she probably gets like half the studio clause. I mean, there had to have been some. That contract must have netted her a fortune if Warner Brothers tried to duck out of that show.
Mm-hmm. I think the last thing that needs to be said on this, and it's again another thing that, like, it's another one of the multiple albatrosses around the neck of this poor movie. Like, this thing was developed for a while. Like, it was developed over the course of like two different leadership heads at Warner Brothers, then the merger, then the third. Like, there's never been enough consistency or time put into any of the DC projects, to be quite candid, to let an actual vision kind of mature, because everything's backed up. Like, everything's in the pipe. You don't have time to pivot. You've got 3 more movies coming out. You've got 2 in development. You got 1 that's ready to be released. You got 3 that are, you got 2 shooting, 3 in development, 1 about to be released, and this is the schedule now. This is what we do. And if you have to course correct, you can't. It's like, what did you liken it to, Mike? Trying to turn a super tanker.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we're dealing with here. You've got, $700 million tied up in, 3-4 movies. Probably more than that, actually. Closer to $1 billion. And they're in various stages of development and shooting, and you've got to keep this. Like, how do you fix stuff? You can't at this. You just can't at this rate. You shoot everything 3 times, which is one of the big problems, especially over at Disney, by the way. Like you shoot the movie, or you shoot like each individual scene 3 times, and I don't mean like different takes. I mean like 3 different versions of the scene. So your budget explodes. The VFX guys are put upon because your attitude towards everything is we'll fix it in post.
VXF guys just finally decided to start their own union because they were tired of this crap.
Good for them. I freely acknowledge unions can be abusive, manipulative, and corrupt as everything else can. But if you've got 2 abusive, manipulative organizations fighting each other, I say let them fight and let them burn. And then you scrapbook together the movie, and it's a terrible way to create anything that anyone likes. And we're starting to see that more and more in box office returns, and a lack of fan support and a lack of enthusiasm for anything. I mean, look, you had the weirdos at Barbenheimer, and yes, I'll call y'all weirdos. But I mean this. When was the last time prior to that you had that you had genuine fan, market engagement? It was probably Endgame, or maybe No Way Home, or No Way Home. But that's it.
Yeah.
Not had that from anything.
I would say actually Endgame. My argument against No Way Home was people weren't quite sure they were going to get the cameo palooza that we got with No Way Home until people started seeing No Way Home.
And then announced it's spoiling it on the boards.
Yeah. And they're like, oh, okay. The 2 Spider-Men show up. This is what I wanted. I'm going to, oh my God, Daredevil's in it. Spoilers. I'm running out to go see this thing. Finally, I got the movie I wanted. Well, that's not the same as Endgame, where people were like, it doesn't matter what this is. Like, you've led us up to this point. You've teased it all the way up to here. We are ready to explode now. So we're here. Let's do it. Let's explode. And
we did explode. We did explode. The ceiling popped off at the theater when I saw it on opening night.
Oh yeah, fucking Anthony Mackie goes on your left, and like the roof came off the place.
Exactly.
And
you know what? You're right, Mark. I do miss going to movies and feeling that level of excitement. We have not had that in years.
Yeah, look, I go to a lot of concerts. I don't know if you know that about me or not. But
no, Mark, tell me where 80% of your annual budget goes.
But
tell me I'm wrong.
I will tell you, I have been to some concerts that were like Endgame, where Endgame was like a lot of concerts I've been to, where you could feel the energy and it was so loud, and you really could feel like you were going to push the roof off the place. That's how Endgame was, and yeah, I kind of miss that too, because it's almost impossible now to create that kind of an environment. I mean, like when my kids and I saw the marathon of Guardians of the Galaxy movies, there was some excitement there, but that was a theater full of like the most diehard people, so it was like a concentrated effort, but spread out over the general movie going public. Yeah, nothing since Endgame. All right, Robert, go into the plot synopsis, or really finish up and then
last thing. I mean that, but to the point of superhero fatigue. Again, last thing I'm going to say on this, if you want another kind of example about how we've kind of arrived where we've arrived, since we talked about No Way Home, keep in mind the box office take for No Way Home was like 1.8 billion. Box office take for Spider-Verse, it's maybe a third of that.
Yeah.
And I can tell you which is the objectively better movie, by the way.
All right. Plot synopsis. Hit it.
If any of this sounds familiar, Ollie, well... So, Blue Beetle.
Well, then make it quick, bud.
Oh, this will be real quick. So, Blue Beetle, we open with the evil white billionaire, Susan Sarandon, and her nefarious henchmen finding the Scarab and a giant block of concrete somewhere in the world. Somewhere cold. There were tents, it was windy, it was cold. That's all we know. Then we meet Jaime Reyes. He has returned from college back home to his family, but his family is not doing so good. You see, while he was at college, his father's auto parts store or mechanic shop, I forget which one it is, one of those two, it kind of goes under, and they're losing the house. Oh, and by the way, Dad had a heart attack. And he kind of goes, "What the?" Look, you don't want to bother me with the day-to-day minutia of life back here when I'm away at college. Fair play, but the heart attack is something that that kind of should break through that. And he's, he's a little bit, woe is me. I'm a pre-law student, and guys, pre-law is about as useful as pre-med. If you don't go all the way, it doesn't mean much.
But of course, he can't go further than that without going even further into debt. I love the line when he puts the graduation cap on, asks the stranger, "How do I look?" And the guy just unflinchingly goes, "Like you're 6 figures in debt."
Terribly wrong. So we're introduced to, again, Jaime's family. He's got his dad, he's got his mom, his sister, his grandma, and the crazy uncle. Which is just George Lopez playing George Lopez. And they're a fun little group. They try to figure out what's going on. He needs to get a job. So he and his sister work at a cleaning company, and this goes sideways for him when he tries to stick up for Jenny.
Lost her favorite penny, so I gave her $1. She kissed me, and I hollered.
I don't know what that is.
It's a De La Soul song.
Okay. So he tries to stick up for her, gets himself and his sister fired. Jenny's like, "Okay, I feel bad for you. So come by the tower tomorrow, and I'll see what I can do for you." He's like, "Yay, great." He shows up the next day as she has stolen the scarab because evil Susan Sarandon is trying to create an evil army for evil profits.
It's the Yellow Jacket.
It's Yellow Jacket. She's just trying to...
Like I said, Ant-Man, Iron Man, Shmush.
Well, even in Iron Man, the whole thing was, don't we want to sell weapons to people? What's wrong with you?
And look, if Susan Sarandon had been bald with a beard and Jeff Bridges, it could have just been Iron Man.
Sure.
Anyway, she steals the scarab and gives it to Jaime and says, "You take you person I met yesterday and don't actually know. Take this, go away, and keep it safe." He's like, "Sure."
Keep it hidden, keep it safe.
And then he gets home and his family makes fun of him for not opening it, opening the box it's in. So they open it and they play around with it, and then it touches Jaime and it turns on and it jumps on his face and then burrows under his skin and fuses to his spinal column. And he turns into the blue Iron Man jacket and he flies up through the ceiling because we need to have a big space shot in these things. And he falls back to Earth because we need the braking system. And then he flies around and he cuts a bus in half and he winds up going back home. And his family's all freaked out. And every time he transforms, he loses all of his clothes because comedy. And he's like, "Okay, what's going on?" So he goes to see Jenny and figure out what's going on. And Jenny is being chased by a murder squad through the streets of this allegedly metropolitan city. He saves Jenny. She explains that, no, this is the scarab. It's, it chooses who it attached to, and we got to do something about it. He's like, "Yeah, it's kind of under my skin and fused to my body, and I really don't like this. So we need to figure out how to get out." And like, "Okay, well, my dad's stuff might know, but we got to break into the headquarters." And George Lopez is like, "I got a thing." And he stands up and does his comedy special for 5 minutes, and everyone inside comes out to murder him. No, he's actually got a homemade jerry-rigged jamming device that miraculously works on everything. They go in to get the key that they need, and they fight the big henchman, and the hero gets his butt kicked because there's got to be one of those, unless you're Captain Marvel, in which case that never happens. Sorry, no overcoming for Captain Marvel.
Move it along.
Yeah. So they fight. He argues with his suit because it's a sentient entity, and they escape. They go to the old mansion, and in the bowels of Wayne Manor, they find hobo Michael Keaton. No, sorry. They find a fresco on the ground that is a blue scarab They go down, and it turns out that Jenny's father was the first Blue Beetle, and his equipment kind of sucked and didn't work all the time, which is a nice little homage to the original comic character, because that was the gimmick. He sucked. It was funny.
I'm still waiting for a Ted Kord Booster Gold movie.
Never gonna happen.
I can dream.
Booster
Gold's one of my favorite DC characters. Okay.
So down there, they find out that they can't get the thing out of Jaime until he dies, and the suit won't let him die, so he's just stuck forever. That's where the movie ends. Kind of a downer. No. So
he can die. He can die.
It's theoretically possible. It's just hard. And right around the same time, the Kord private security raid the Reyes house, and Jaime goes to rescue them, and there's a firefight, and he gets captured, and the dad has a heart attack and dies, and everyone else, left alive inexplicably, arms themselves with, the first Blue Beetle's tech, and they get into his weird little Beetle ship, and they charge off to the rescue, and we get a big action scene, and the evil guy powers up. We get not one, Mark, but two instances of everyone's favorite modern cinema trope. Big action set piece, quasi-emotional moments set to contemporary pop music. That's anything you'd hear on the radio.
You know what's so funny? I can't remember if it was that or it's the scene where they land the Beetle ship. And they started playing music, and I was just like, please let this be Sabotage, because I want to see Robert. I wanted to see you just fucking lose your mind.
No, they actually chose a good song.
I was gonna say the music to the action scenes works in this. Okay,
it's a general trope that I
like Kickstart My Heart as much as the next Motley Crue fan, but the point was, for those people who can't seem to get it, was, as you're saying, we've now done this the exact same thing so many times. They might as well have used Sabotage, because that's the most famous one for that kind of thing. Either that or No Sleep Till Brooklyn.
That's already been used twice now in 2023.
Yeah, I'm just, hey, why fix it if it ain't broke?
So yeah, they do that twice. Anyway, we get our big fight scene. We get a big action scene. Big fight between Jaime and the other guy. They tease that George Lopez is dead, and we all celebrate, and then he's alive, and we all go, oh. And eventually, the evil henchman redeems himself, because don't you understand, Mark? The evil henchman who's done evil things was just a victim all along of evil Susan Sarandon, and he blows himself and the entire island thereon up. Our heroes escape at the last minute.
Suicide, as we all know, is painless.
I have been told that.
What, you didn't watch MASH as a kid?
I get the reference. Hence, I've been told that.
We're all so close.
And they all go back home, and their house is burned in a wreck, but the neighborhood shows up to support them, even though they've been doing nothing for the entire movie. And Jenny comes along and says, I've inherited this billion-dollar corporation that I'm going to run into the ground now, but before I do, we'll make sure that this land will not buy any of this place up, and I'll pay to fix your house up just the way it was. And can't you make it a little better? No, exactly the way it was. That's all you get. And Jaime and her start a bit of a romance, and they fly off into the sky, and that's the movie.
All right, real quick.
Oh, and then there's a mid-credit scene.
Oh, there is?
You didn't... Okay, Robert, I know that...
I should have looked it up.
What is the mid-credit scene?
All the power turns back on in the Beetle layer, as I'm calling it.
Yes.
And a message plays that apparently was unlocked when the computer was restarted, and it's Ted Kord saying he's still alive. Yeah, sequel bait.
He's in the Tronverse. All right, so real quick. So I was
unless it's Alan Tudyk, I don't care.
So one of the things I noticed about this movie was, and like you were saying before, they produced it a certain way. It was set to be on TV, and they tried to shine it up for theatrical exhibition as best they could. But there's only so much they can do, and they couldn't recast the whole goddamn thing. But that was the first thing that jumped out at me, is the kid from Cobra Kai has a lot of charisma. He's a good-looking kid. He's a fine enough actor. But I'm sure someday he will translate to the big screen and he will do just fine. He's a good enough looking kid that with a little age and a little, and a little life on him, and some good pictures under his name, he can be a fine enough lead man. I have no doubt about that. But
I doubt.
He is not ready for that, and he was not ready for this, and this was not a good movie for theatrical exhibition. This was perfectly fine to watch at home, which is half the problem, which is why we had the opening discussion that we had. He's a good enough TV lead, not a good enough movie lead.
I'm not entirely even convinced he's a good enough TV lead.
Am I the only one who thought he did a good job?
It's not.
It's not. No. This is not about whether or not he's a good actor. He's not a bad actor.
Yeah, I think he's a great. Oh, sorry, Mark. Please go ahead. I'll get my turn.
Well, it's not a matter of that. It's I just got finished saying like he's a good enough actor. I don't think he translates well to the big screen. That's not saying he's a bad actor. So
you're gonna carry $100 million plus picture on your shoulders. It's hard to say what it is. Like I hate to be ephemeral about it because I don't like doing that, but there's people who can do that and there's people who can't. And at the moment, he's not one of them.
Look, there's been people who have done a lot of like Johnny Depp. Okay. Johnny Depp is a really good example of somebody who did a lot of television. And, his most famous thing on TV was 21 Jump Street. And he jumped into the movies and it took him a while before people started to see him as a leading man. And he kind of went away for a while and then had to make a comeback. I believe it was with the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. And that was by being a, crazy person, who was trying to get himself uglied up and all of that. So again, there's TV good and then there's big screen good. And the kids right now, TV good, which is half the problem with this movie, which goes to the rest of the cast. George Lopez was a thing, 10 years ago?
Longer, Mark. It's 2023.
Yeah.
It's close. I don't say that. No, that's not a dig at anyone.
Mm-hmm.
It's closer to 20.
It's like, when not Rosie Perez, Rosie O'Donnell was well past her prime, but they would stick her in movies and oh look, it's a name, Rosie O'Donnell. It's like, okay, this name no longer carries any value. This isn't helping. He was again not commenting on his acting ability. It's just this is not the guy to draw people. This is not a reason to go see this movie. And the rest of the cast.
For the record, let me look up when the George Lopez show went off the air while you keep going.
I was thinking about so the kid who plays the sister, she's great in this. Not judging her acting ability at all, but who the hell is she? And then you have the parents and the grandma. And the grandmother was really funny. I laughed at the revolutionary stuff as hackneyed as it was, because it was, again, somebody made a list of things that are Mexican. We'll put them in the movie. Which is one of my issues with this. This is both earnestly ethnic and caricature ethnic. And it kind of drove me nuts.
The George Lopez show, the one he kind of got known for.
Yeah.
2002 to 2007.
Okay. So longer.
By the way, the sister, she hasn't done a whole lot, but her last leading role was she was one of the leads in Hocus Pocus 2.
So anywho, so you have a wildly unknown cast. I mean, again, Susan Sarandon well past her prime as well. I don't know when the last time Susan Sarandon did something particularly relevant. And a not yet ready for primetime cast. I can appreciate, especially me, I can appreciate the wanting to do something ethnic, but again, it feels like somebody put together. It feels like a bunch of white people put together a list of what they think Mexican is. And we'll do that on screen.
I have to do this because this movie opened itself up for this. You brought this on yourself, movie, but one more time for the people in the back. Brazilians don't speak Spanish.
Wait, she only spoke one line, and I couldn't tell actually if that was Portuguese or Spanish when she said it.
That was Spanish. I bet a lot of money.
The rest of it was.
If you can confirm, I'm not saying you're wrong. I have no brain capability for foreign language, hence why I didn't go with my husband back to Romania this time. But I mean, I just assumed multiple times she was fluent in Spanish, and that's why she understood what the family was saying. But she does only say one line in a foreign language, and again, unless you can prove that was Spanish and not Portuguese.
Again, if this is one of the, I don't give a shit about the fucking language.
I know.
If there's one of these things where if you don't watch a lot of movies, or what you have. This is another thing that you focus on, so your memory from one movie to the next lapses, and so you might have a really good time with this. Again, the theater I watched it in did. That's the problem. This movie is only as good as the last movie you saw. And if you saw a bunch in the past 6 weeks, then this movie suffers a lot. If you haven't seen a movie in 6 weeks, and you certainly haven't seen a bunch of fresh, young Mexican, Hispanic faces doing fun ethnic stuff and being all lighthearted about it, and doing all your favorite superhero stuff that you haven't seen in a while because you don't go to the movies all that much and you don't watch the shit at home, then yeah, the movie probably moves up a few notches in a lot of people's eyes. Again, like my kids walked out of it and they were like, this was great. What did you think, Dad? And I went, I don't want to tell you. You're too young to have good, strong ego integrity, and I don't want to upset you today. Wait till Monday. But I'll go throw it over to you, Alexis, because all I can say is, in a vacuum, in the Roddy Adams, Chris Bailey vacuum, the movie is perfectly fine. Some might even say it's mediocre. But run up against the weight and breadth of just the last year of films. Again, to quote Robert Winfree, it is aggressively mid. Go ahead.
I'm not going to argue that this is a movie that blows me out of the water, but I did enjoy it, so I'm giving it a higher than mid rating. I'm sorry, I thought Xolo was good in it. I thought he was very likable. I thought he had a lot of charm. I thought all of the actors playing the family worked really well together. I love the design of Palermo City. I love that they tried to give it a really unique feel, so it didn't just look like, oh, it's another Gotham, it's another Metropolis. They wanted it to kind of be like Miami in the DC world, and I thought they did a really good job with the design of that. I thought the effects were really good, and a lot of that is due to the fact that Xolo actually wore a prosthetic suit for a lot of the shots. There was a decent amount of CGI, obviously, but Robert, you and I talk about this all the time, that when a director can mix practical effects, visual, and CGI, it comes across looking a lot more realistic because they know how to trick the eye. So using the prosthetic suit was a really smart move, and I thought it looked really good. And yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I am very happy to see more representation with superheroes. I mentioned before, I haven't read a lot with Jaime Reyes as the Blue Beetle, except for his work with the Teen Titans. I'm a little more familiar with that. In fact, side note for those who actually want to learn more about the character, I recommend the animated adaptation of the Judas Contract, which is on, I think it's still on HBO Max. I don't think they took it off. The character was put into that, and you learn a lot about him, actually, in that animated film. I highly recommend it. And I actually got a quote here that I wanted to use from one of our frequent collaborators, Mr. Benjamin Colon, who commented about on my wall when I mentioned I went to see this. His girlfriend, I guess, surprised him with tickets to go see it. And he writes here, it was far better than I expected and had a lot of emotional weight, especially in terms of certain themes in it relevant to Latin Americans. I'm recommending it to everyone, and I really hope word of mouth leads to some slow burn success. This is something we do need to see more of in our superheroes, and it really pains me that a film that has great representation for the Latin community, Warner Brothers just kind of said, screw it.
So I want something my son mentioned. He's like, I know you horrible people, you child abusers, like to pick at my kids, but my son's actually really smart, and because he's grown up here and he's listened to enough of this stuff, he's really picked up the language of film far better than any 9-year-old I've ever met. So immersion works. And he was saying, he was like, it would have been better than just like the first half an hour of the movie just focusing on Jaime and his trials and tribulations, seeing where the Scarab came from and what it does, getting some idea of what this alien technology is, so that when we see it, we can relate more to it. I thought that was an interesting.
Not entirely wrong.
pickup. You're sympathetic towards Jaime, and that was what the whole first half an hour was supposed to do, is get you sympathetic to what's going on with him. But it would have been nice because the Scarab kind of acts as its own character, the way the Iron Man suit did, the way Jarvis was in the Iron Man. And it would have been nice to have, if they had done stuff to kind of get you familiar a little bit more with the alien and the alien technology before moving into the action of the movie. I thought, for a 9-year-old kid, that was an interesting pickup. And then again, there was this whole argument over, if you're gonna have Ted Kord in there, have him in there, or start with him. Don't just
you need to, Mark.
Yeah.
Don't date people who argue in favor of Ted Kord movie.
All right. Anything else, Alexis?
Again, it kills me that Warner Brothers sabotaged the marketing for this, because frankly, if this is the kind of movie that we're going to get more of with James Gunn, because James Gunn has openly said that even though the reboot is coming after Blue Beetle, he's saying Blue Beetle can be part of the new DCEU.
You keep saying sabotage as if this is the producers and like they're trying to purposely make a bad production. I don't think it's sabotage, and I don't think it's gutted, and I don't think any of that. I honestly think this is a company that has had so many losses, and there was a great financial loss in the merge, that at this point they are holding things together to a degree with shoelaces and bubblegum. And so I think the lack of marketing goes to trying to reduce the size of the budget, not incompetency. I think they're just like, put it out there and see how it does. But we can't, when we're not excessively spending. That's what got us in this fucking hole in the first place. I said it before and I'll say it again. The race into the streaming wars has been the worst financial plague of the entertainment business since I don't know what.
Dude, especially considering that basically at this point all they're trying to do is recreate cable.
But I swear to God, nothing has wrecked the. Go ahead, Robert.
Okay, I just related to the streaming comment, especially since all they're doing at this point is recreating cable. There's not actually enough sustainable income in monthly subscription. So now we're selling ad space.
Right.
And this is where we are, because that actually is a model that generates revenue.
Yeah. Sorry, Mark, though. I do have to disagree. I'm going to continue to keep using the word sabotage. I really think that Warner Brothers, made a huge mistake.
Intent is implied with sabotage. That
I'm okay. That's the difference. I'm not saying they looked at this and went, haha, evil pyramid, finger pyramid of evil or something like that. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that the higher ups screwed up royally because they decided, you know what, let's cut the they said we're cutting the marketing budget. The marketing budget was cut. This wasn't oops, we forgot to, move a decimal point over. They cut the marketing budget. And I think this movie would have done a lot better. Yeah, Mark's gone. If, they had been able to put the marketing budget where it needed to be. I think that this movie would have done a lot better had they been pushing it in the right markets a lot earlier on.
And again, I'm going to
hang on.
I want to address that specific point, and then you can kind of back clean up. Again, you're looking at a balance sheet. You're looking at the amount of that you're spending, and you're going, where can we cut? And because I know how some of these people think. I guarantee you, somebody in a higher position was just like, put it out there and see how it does. Maybe it does well, but we can't go ahead and spend $1 zillion on this thing. We don't have it. We just don't have it. And not every project is worth it. Go ahead, Robert.
You got to understand what is going, what's going on over at Warner Brothers here. These are not people who are trying to cut the legs out from everything they do, but these are World War I generals who are they know everyone's going to die. Okay, we're going to throw an artillery bombardment out there and then charge through no man's land. That's what they're doing. And they just spent a giant cache of artillery bombardment for the Flash, and everyone got massacred anyway, and they didn't have quite enough left over for this one, so a smaller group charged the lines.
I mean, and look at what they've had to do with Aquaman. How many times they've been shooting Aquaman since fucking I was in elementary school.
You're not wrong.
Why is that? Okay, seriously, why are they saving Aquaman? That movie needs to be buried. There is no way it's going to make the money back.
It's Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. That's Team A. Team B, Flash, Green Lantern, fucking Aquaman.
Okay, Mark, also, I'm sorry, but I refuse to believe that these idiots do not have the common sense to know that Ezra Miller and Amber Heard are going to kill the studio.
They don't care. The first Aquaman made $1 billion, and that's how Lizard Brain works. That's it, Alexis. I love you, sweetie. It's just like you're like taking big swings and hitting the umpire. It's not that complicated. They looked at Aquaman and like, it made $1 billion. We gotta save this movie. You don't make because when one movie makes $1 billion, they all make $1 billion. That's Lizard Brain. I don't know why you get to a certain point in your executive career and Lizard Brain happens to you, but that's what happens because I can't imagine they were born that way.
Frankly, I'm starting to agree with Robert with the idea that Ezra Miller's got nude photos of David Zaslav.
They're more
the easy solution. The simplest solution is usually the right solution. Robert, go your craft review.
Again, here's the thing about when I call this aggressively mid. We've turned that sentiment into an insult because for some reason we live in a world that would rather something be abjectly terrible but somehow memorable. Yeah, thanks, Mark. I know you're part of that movement, and I hate that movement as much as I would have hated the Bohemians and the hippies had I been around for those particular time periods. No, make something of quality, even if it doesn't have an enduring legacy. Make something of quality, and mid is just that. This is a C. We're grading this movie. It's a C, maybe leaning C minus. But that's what it is. And the reality is that's passing. This is, all things considered, a passing film in that respect. It's got personality. The characters are very broadly drawn, and that both works for it and against it in certain respects. It prevents you from investing on anything other than a kind of superficial level. On the plus side, if you know what you're doing, by being superficial, it gives the audience room to put themselves into the emotional situation. They will fill in the gaps for you. So, the dad dying, credit for killing the dad. But we don't know anything about him, really. No, he brought his mother and his brother across the border, and he's busted his ass to be here. Okay,
it seems like the height of lazy writing that someone just sits around going, "What are things that?" It's like that. What is it, Tearjerker from Family? From American Dad. Like, what are the things that generally make people cry? Put that in the movie. That's fine. Like, in the absence of character development or bonding with a character through time and effort, they just put in shit that commonly works.
You're not wrong. The biggest knock on this movie is I've seen it a dozen times at this point. I've seen it a dozen times in the last 2 years. It's your plucky underdog hero, gets power, wasn't expecting, montage where he's in over his head, trying to figure it out, more complications, bad thing happens, nearly loses himself in the final fight against his nemesis, who is a dark reflection of himself. How many times have we seen this now?
I think, I want to say it was the critically acclaimed guys. Might have actually been a good friend of the show, Whitney Seibold, who was like, why is it and you know what? And he might have been quoting something that was on Twitter. Fucking Russian egg thing. But one of the biggest tropes, one of the biggest things that you see in every superhero movie is the villain is the superhero with different colors. It's they're always fighting themselves. It is and when you see it every single time, it's like, all right, can we not do another thing with this? I mean, that was the kind of the fun thing about, not to beat up on this again, but that was kind of the fun thing about Thanos. Thanos was wildly different from any other villain in the entire Marvel universe.
Mhm.
You know, he had a vision. He saw the world away, and he went about getting the tools he needed, the resources he needed to make the world in the way that he thought made the most sense. And he didn't look like anybody else. Nobody else looked like, Grimace on steroids. So that's what I'm saying. Like, and even like Loki to an extent, Loki was like a nice like contrast to Thor. While Thor is big, beefy, big meaty man slapping meat with a hammer, there you had Loki, who was long and wrangly and greasy hair, like as opposed to Iron Man, where who does Iron Man fight in the first Iron Man movie? A bigger Iron Man.
He fights Ironmonger, he fights Whiplash, and he fights extremists, dude. Like he fights guys who are very clearly designed to replicate parts of himself.
Right.
And you get kind of the same thing with Captain America. Much as I enjoy some of those movies, like Red Skull is deliberately a mirror for a dark reflection of Cap. Bucky is
a dark reflection of Cap.
Well, that's a little bit different. And then then it's Civil War, so he beats up on Tony Stark. It was just his opposite number in pretty much every respect.
Yeah. So anyway, moving on.
So again, we've seen this. We've seen it a lot, and that's kind of my big gripe with this movie. It's very paint by numbers. It's very, here's how you make a superhero movie. It's going to be brightly colored. It's going to be wacky fun. We'll infuse music that you hear on the radio in a bunch of different places. You're going to fight someone that's just like you, but evil in different colors. And
it's teaching the test. It is just to finish this up. I'm gonna finish you off for you. This is teaching the test. We're not teaching critical thinking here. We're not teaching critical filmmaking. We're not pushing critical filmmaking in a lot of places. We are teaching the test. Here are the answers to the questions you're going to be asked. Memorize them, repeat them verbatim. You'll pass the test. Here's the problem. Passing the test isn't going to cut it. Not, this is like, okay.
Turns out you're not passing the test anymore.
Well, here's a great analogy. When everyone goes to college and everyone has a liberal arts degree, nobody has any skills and nobody can get any jobs. And that's why everyone's $600,000 or $100,000 in debt and can't find a job that pays a living wage because no one has any actual skills, because everyone went to college and got underwater basket weaving degrees instead of, a functional skill. This is why plumbers make $1 million now. Like, because or like air conditioning guys. Because like no one knows how to actually do anything that, can't be done by an AI. So, all right. With that said, speaking of artificial intelligence, we ready to move on to the money?
Anything else I wanted to say? No, I think we more or less covered it all.
Alexis, you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. Then with that said, here comes the... Let's try that one more time. Here comes the... Buttons work. Here comes the money.
We're in the money. We're in the money.
Did not sleep well last night, and I am all thumbs tonight. All right. On a budget of $104 million, this thing made $43.4 million. Yikes. What last week when I was with Debbie Downer and the Downer sisters, what I called it between 20 and 30 domestic, right?
I want to say you were about that. I think I said low 20s, and then we had the the more pessimistic than even us doing like, Barbie will still be on top. And here's the only thing I'm going to say about that. It was a lot closer than you would have liked if you're rooting for Blue Beetle.
Well, okay, a couple of things. One, I said, generally speaking, in its fourth week, nothing, or fourth or fifth week, nothing stays in the number one spot. I was trying to explain this to my kids because they were like, how did Blue Beetle beat Barbie? Barbie's been out for over a month. It's not going to make, if your movie makes $40 million and Barbie made $38 million that weekend, then Barbie isn't the number one movie of the weekend. It still made over $1 billion. It's still winning. It's still the better, earning movie than Blue fucking Beetle. It just, we're talking about what happened in this particular weekend. Less and less people go to the movies to see a particular movie with each successive weekend. This isn't that complicated. But I think Pat and Dorian were like, this thing makes less than 20 million. I said it makes plus 20 million. And I said it would be the number one movie of the weekend because nothing lasts this long in the number one spot. It just doesn't. The floor erodes beneath you. You are, beset by waves. It happens.
I think the only movies in the last couple of years that did that were like Avatar and Maverick.
I wonder, did Titanic have a long run at the number one spot?
Yep, because it came out in January and had like 3 months before anything else came out.
You there? Because you were starting to talk, and I'm like, I don't know if it's you guys or me, but like something keeps like slowing the internet down here. What were you saying?
I think it's you.
Yeah, sorry, Mark.
Whatever. I don't care. Just, what were you saying?
That Titanic had a long run because nothing else came out for like 2.5 months. Yeah. And I think the last movies to be successful in the number one spot for prolonged periods of time were Maverick and Water.
Yeah. All right. As of August 20th, 2023, Blue Beetle has grossed $25.5 million in the U.S. and Canada and $18 million in other territories for a worldwide total of $43.4. In the U.S. and Canada, Blue Beetle was released alongside Strays and was projected to gross 25 to 32 million.
I have to laugh at that movie.
From 4,000 movie theaters in its opening weekend. The film made $10 million on its first day, including $3.3 million from Thursday night previews. It went on to debut 25.4, topping the box office. 39% of the opening weekend audience was Hispanic, while 66% was male. The film's $43 million global opening was described by Variety as one of the softest starts in the history of the DC cinematic universe. You know what's funny? Swap this and Birds of Prey. Like, put this on the Birds of Prey spot when that came out, where the shit wasn't that bad. And it actually, I think, does better because, I mean, Birds of Prey was terrible. It was rated R. It was exactly what nobody wanted. And it didn't do well.
Mark, women.
And it didn't do well.
Women, nothing. That was the review. That was the first time I was on a review with you guys, and the movie broke me.
My point being, like, you swap spots with this thing, and I think Blue Beetle does exponentially better. This is all about fucking time.
Look, I'm gonna reference the Critical Drinker again, but when he says if this thing came out 6-7 years ago, it probably would have had an audience.
Yeah,
not wrong.
If this thing comes out between 2017 and 2019, it does just fine. Just fine.
Well, yeah, it came out before Ant-Man.
All right.
Sorry, again, mush.
All right, so Blue Beetle was the number one movie of the weekend, knocking Barbie from 1 to 2 in its 5th week. Again, people, nothing lasts forever, and certainly not in the number one spot for 5 weeks running, unless it was Titanic 100 years ago.
Yeah, but look, wait for the Barbie sequel, Mark.
No, I am praying that the world actually ends.
The director has said she doesn't want to make a sequel.
No one cares. No. You think that's going to stop them?
I actually love what Randall Park pointed out about that, because after this movie, after Barbie blew up the way it did, all these studios were like, okay, let's start adapting more games and more, toys and stuff. And he's like, and Park's just like, do you think maybe it has something to do with the fact that, I don't know, it's a movie for women and it was directed by a woman? You think maybe that could be the reason it did so well? But no, studios are now snatching up to make Mr. Potato Head movies.
Yeah, Bonnie Buck says he would never have said anything to that effect if he wasn't on strike. I would bet you money. That's
fine. I also don't care. But the more important point is what I brought up a few weeks ago, where I said we are living. I think I might have said this to Dorian, so it might have just been last week, or for Haunted Mansion, where I said we are living. That there are two universes, and we're living in the evil one, where everyone takes the wrong lessons from things. Because in the good universe, we don't make a Barbie sequel because the only reason why it did well is because it was resonant with people, not because it was a fucking doll movie.
Yep. Barbie 2, Barbie 3, all coming. All coming your way.
Again, I'm not clinically pessimistic, or nihilistic, but I have hit a point where to save us from ourselves, I'll take the asteroid. At this point, I'm not willing to live on this planet that continues to do these stupid things.
Now,
it's
Mark, okay, if you guys want to, if everyone out there wants a microcosm of Mark, my relationship with Mark, how this has gone for the last decade plus, it's this. It's me saying, bad coming, very bad. And Mark going, no, this was fine. And me going, know what you're doing. You don't know
what Robert's talking.
Hang on.
No, wait. What Robert is describing is exactly what happened for me and my wife for about 15 years, where I go, the train is coming. And she's like, just let me get hit by the train already. Then she gets hit by the train, and she said she was hit by the train. In this case, I'm Melissa.
Yeah, this is me going, Mark, I can see a little further. I can see the curve. I can see a little further over the horizon than you.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta fight this with me. Like, no, I liked this. I'm excited for this. Please let me be excited.
No, Robert, things can't possibly get worse.
And I'm sitting here going, no.
I just realized I'm a horror movie victim. No,
little bit.
House seems fine.
This is a Victorian model. Nothing bad can happen here. It's me going, you all think you're in a raunchy sex comedy. I know we're in a horror movie. I'm out.
Yeah. All right. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles dropped from 3 to 4. We will not be reviewing that. Strays debuted at 5. Yikes.
Oof.
We will also not be reviewing that.
Here's I could just make like somebody flush a toilet. That's a review of Strays.
Perfect. Meg 2 dropped from 4 to 6. 7 retained its spot in the at number 7. Haunted Mansion 6 to 8. Mission Impossible retained its spot at number 9. And The Sound of Conservatives dropped from 8 to 10. And
unfortunately, Last Voyage of the Demeter dropped from 5 to 11.
I was gonna say, and doing its impression of an anchor at sea, The Last Voyage of the Demeter fell from 5 to 11. Let me just go ahead and say on behalf of that movie,
yeah, I'm just hoping at
I
this
normally
point.
wouldn't let it go.
Go ahead.
No. Oh no, I was gonna say I literally hit the button. I was like, oh, I got a text. Let me check that. I'm gonna let the plane continue to crash while I check my messages.
Yeah, at this point, I'm just hoping that movie finds a second life once it's on streaming or people rent it or whatnot, because it's a better movie than that.
Oh, the 2023 re-release of Old Boy debuted.
Hang on. Run your cursor over that. I need to know if that's I think that's the original Korean film.
It is the original Korean film. It is the original Korean film. They advertised it a while back because I remember aggregating that news.
Because that's an genuinely exceptional piece of filmmaking.
Indiana Jones.
Question: why the hell would they re-release the American remake?
I don't know.
Wants to see that again?
I don't know why Spike Lee is still alive. And yet here we are.
Because Black don't crack. Indiana Jones and the Great Depression fell from 10 to 13.
Oh, that movie's lost so much money. It's funny.
All right. Spider-Man dropped from 14 to 18. Landscape with Invisible Hand debuted at 20. Birth Rebirth 23. The Moon 24. And that is it for the weekend that was. Worldwide, Barbie's still trailing behind the Super Mario Brothers movies at 1,280,000,000. Yeah. And then Super Mario's at 1/3 at 1,355,000,000.
You guys really think Barbie is gonna overtake Mario as the #1 movie of the year?
Again,
I'm not arguing against whether or not. I'm just curious if you guys really think that.
There's still, September. There's nothing.
Yeah.
There's just
September.
I don't think it's going to blow it out of the water, but I think it'll wind up getting ahead of it.
Okay.
Guardians is still at number 3. Oppenheimer has risen to number 4. Oppenheimer is
good for that one.
So Barbie was one of those where why wouldn't it make $1 billion? It's a doll movie. It's been selling Barbie since the year of the flood. This is the lizard species logic. So forget Barbie. Who cares about Barbie? Barbie sucks. Oppenheimer is the real success story here because there's no pitch. There's no meeting. There's no sale where someone's going, I have this crowd pleaser. It's going to make $1 billion. It's a 3-hour movie about the guy who made the atomic bomb. Get the fuck out of my office. Okay. And yet And yet, Oppenheimer, the little engine that could, is number 4 at $718 billion. $718 million.
On a $100 million budget.
Yeah, I mean,
Christopher Nolan.
This is why, and it's sort of depressing because for TikTok, I cut our discussion and I named it on the subject of big money Chris Nolan, and it didn't get as many views as I would have liked it to compared to some of the other nonsense I put up there. And
TikTok nonsense does quite well.
Well, I what I'm lamenting is here we are recognizing one of the auteur filmmakers of our age, and I don't think he's appreciated for what he does, because he doesn't just make good films. He doesn't just make a happening on screen. He's by far and away one of the most distinguished and interesting and successful directors going. And there's still a large contingent of people going, I don't care. And it's like, no good deed goes unpunished. People who are truly the best at what they do are not appreciated for their genius. And that kind of hurts my soul. And I needed to say that about Chris Nolan, because while I don't love everything that he does, can we at least appreciate the treasure that we have in this man and not just take him for granted? Why are we taking this man for granted, Robert?
Because we'd rather watch the Barbie movie.
Shut up. Fast X.
Dude,
by the way,
tell me I'm wrong.
By the way, I was checking our numbers. Fast X on audio, one of the best downloaded shows we've done this year. One of the most downloaded, I should say.
Makes no sense to me.
Not even a little bit, other than people like to watch us hate fuck movies. I don't know, I don't know why that is. They like to see us go irreversible on movies. I don't know why. I guess we're very entertaining when we really hate the shit out of something. So
Mark,
there is something to be said about that.
There's not just one of us in a Paris underground tunnel system. That we do more, and I hate to equate us to these people, but we're more the boys don't cry people. Let's just be honest about it.
You're a boy, you're a girl. Throw her over the hood. All right, moving on. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse 686, Little Mermaid 567, Mission Impossible 541, Ant-Man and the Fentanyl Corpse 476. And
let's find the rest of the movies that are doing better than The Flash.
And Elemental at number 10, though I keep reading things that it's doing better in certain quarters than Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, but
internationally, it has a greater international. I mean, you can see it over there on the side. Like,
right.
Look how much it's made. Elemental's made foreign versus Spider-Verse.
Very true.
Yeah, that's fair. So Elemental is at number 10.
Elemental deserves it.
All right. Here are all the movies doing worse than The Flash. It's a Dungeons and Dragons, Insidious, The Red Door.
Why is Dungeons and Dragons doing so much worse? Dungeons and Dragons was good.
Sound of Freedom, Scream, Evil Dead Rise, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Air, Cocaine Bear. All right. Now that I've beat that joke to death.
Remember when we had hopes for Cocaine Bear?
We did.
I remember I did, and I remember when I had. I remember when I had hope. Period. Next
that
movie.
Before or after your first marriage?
Gran Turismo will be the number 1 movie this weekend. And then we are taking a break. We are hard into September with Heart of Stone and Hidden Strike, because it's funny, when I originally did the schedule, I was like, I'm only going to do 1 movie a week. I can't do these double reviews unless there's so I was like, I'll do triple features. It'll be fine. First of all, Robert and I can't do a triple feature. Every movie we talk about takes an hour. That is supposed to be short, quick hit, 20 to 30 minutes. We're in and we're out. We don't go heavy, like a little bit of a discussion, move on to the next thing. And there's no fucking way Robert and I can do that. So I had to cut an entire movie. And then we just got into this habit of, if it's a streaming show as opposed to a theatrical show, like this would be a theatrical show, the Heart of Stone, Hidden Strike one would be streaming. We just double up the movies. And why do we double up the movies, Robert? Because half of these fucking streaming movies, there is nothing to talk about.
And for the record, both Hidden Strike and Heart of Stone fall pretty firmly into the nothing burger category.
Yup. Anyway.
Tune in 2 weeks, in 2 or 3 weeks, and we'll tell you why in great detail.
When we talk about the great nothing. And then we're taking a break for 2 weeks, and then we're back with the Expendables on September 25th. But if you're like, but Mark, movies, we want to hear you talk. I don't know why you're talking that way. I had a stroke. Evan Bevins and I will be comparing the comic to the movie Two Guns. and Jason and I will be comparing the original White Men Can't Jump to the old White Man Can't Jump. Robert
making the original.
Yep. Ronnie Adams and I are going to be doing an entire triple feature because he and I can do a movie review in 20 minutes. We're going to be looking at Operation Fortune, Ruse de Guerre, The Covenant, and Snatch. That's right. We're looking at all who's he, what's these movies. Guy Ritchie. That's the one. All right. So, yeah. What are we talking about tonight? Blue Beetle. We knew him well, but he's dead now. He's gone. No one will see this movie, and it'll be quickly on the streaming service near you.
Okay,
Yeah.
so here's the real question. Does Barbie go back to #1 next week because Gran Turismo has a very soft opening, or does Gran Turismo...
No, I guarantee you, I will bet money, Gran Turismo. I will bet my house that Gran Turismo is the #1 movie next weekend.
Okay.
All right. Because again, it's not in this. It's 6 weeks in the box office. It's not reclaiming the #1 spot with a movie that's getting good reviews. It's a car race movie. I mean, it's one of those things where there's a lot about it that's attractive to people, and it's got good word of mouth buzz going for it. So, I don't think it's going to be the next $1 billion baby, but I do think it's going to be the #1 movie of the weekend.
So Robert, that means that next week you get a house in Florida.
If I lose, did you miss that part? All right, folks.
The problem is that I have to put up something of roughly equal value for the wager, and
Like the bubble gum.
I'm not mailing you gum.
Good takeaway, asshole.
Oh no! Right. Wait! Oh no! American man in his mid-40s is in crippling debt. Who'd have thought? Film at 11 on this shocking expose with the crushing realities of
and now weather. Hey Ollie, what's the weather? It's raining soup.
Raining sideways.
Yeah, it's raining sideways.
You got an umbrella?
Had one.
Where is it?
Inside out, 3 miles away.
Sounds rough, Ollie. Can we do anything for you?
Send me soup.
What kind of soup?
Chunky.
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Yeah, it's fine. Like the audience, again, audiences were cheering in the theater that I saw it in, and the critics don't hate it. It is amazing what happens when you go to the, Ray finds his fancy restaurant and you order a cheeseburger and you get a damn good cheeseburger. And yes, I partially stole that from the Critical Drinker. All right, all critics, it's a 77 on Rotten Tomatoes. Looking at top critics, it drops it down to 68.
Again,
No surprise there. The verified audience is 92%. All audiences drops it to 87. I'm wondering if this
drop.
I'm wondering how much of that though is negative reviews from people who just don't like Mexicans, and we're like, hey, all superheroes are all white all the time.
Mark, why are you doing that?
No, it's a legitimate
That's
question
not
that people
necessary.
with no lives and a lot of hate would go onto a site and put up a poor review.
Let me tell you. Hang on. Let me tell you who's more likely to review bomb this than the racists.
Okay, I'll take any group. It's fine.
The Marvel fanboys who are just whining that this is an MCU knockoff.
They are worse than racist. They are worse than racist, aren't they?
Look, I didn't say this in my craft review, but for the record, I know this is a DC Warner Brothers film. This is about as Marvel a Marvel movie as you'd find outside
I was
of
gonna
Marvel.
say, I'm sorry. Did we forget the Sumwush?
Nope.
Not a minute, because you haven't gone by a minute without saying it. But you know what always cracks me up about this is, again, we know some very volatile, very passionate, very strict constructionist comic book fans who, if you say to them, Superman, isn't that a Marvel? They pull out a gun and shoot you. But those people outnumber the rest of us. I guarantee you, if you take 100 people, just a random sample of 100 American Americans, and you ask them to sort 10 characters by which company are they in, more than half would get them mostly wrong. They don't know the fucking difference. Some people don't know there's two different companies. They think Marvel and DC are the same company.
They're not.
Give it another couple of years, and I'm sure they'll have the same general.
I hope Chris Bailey comes down from Newfoundland and bites you in the hiney. And with that said, led by the kid from Cobra Kai, his magnetic performance in the title role.
No.
What?
No,
Would you try to pronounce his name just once?
I'm tired of trying. It gets me nowhere. So no.
Hang on. At least Xolo. Xolo's easy.
Right, Zola.
And
movie.
And more importantly, his performance was not magnetic.
I say it was magnetic. Sorry.
All right, led by the Mask of Zorro, magnetic performance in the title role. Blue Beetle is a refreshingly family-focused superhero movie with plenty of humor and heart.
Yeah. Okay. Also, for the record, like this is their big selling point for the Marvels too. Like it's different. It's wacky and fun and lighthearted. Like no, I've watched your crap. You don't get to try and gaslight me into pretending that's not everything you've been putting out.
Vincent Mancini, a film drunk, largely good-natured and charmingly Mexican flavored.
Ah.
It's also.
Hey, you know what? I'm gonna give him credit for actually
crucially lacking in coherent action set pieces, and so it's a bit like a couple of drywall insulation covered in tagine and chamois.
Okay, he goes a little off the rails at the end.
Yeah, sorry.
But
there's no way I could take that without there's a grain of racism in there at least.
Hang on.
Sir, that's a racism.
Hang on. Let me say something else here real fast about this. The fact that the family in question is explicitly Mexican means calling it Mexican isn't out of bounds. It's not. The Latin culture is not a monolith. Like, believe me.
No, Robert, everything's a monolith, don't you know?
And this is the thinking that gets you saying, no, the Brazilians speak Spanish, right? They're from South America, and Mexicans and Puerto Ricans get along just fine. That's a good way to get in the hospital.
Speaking of the hospital, Johnny Gaze-Monic of Fanboys of the Universe. I did not expect to cry during Blue Beetle. Sir, I cry a lot, especially these days, but that's a whole other podcast. I can't believe this one brought you to tears, though. Yikes. Twice, I was not ready for a film that not only delivers a solid superhero origin story, but does so with a tremendous amount of heart and sincerity.
I'm going to take a wild guess that Johnny lost his father and probably related very heavily to that scene where Jaime speaks with his dad in The Great Beyond or whatever the hell it was.
Yeah, and
if he did, that's fine. If that scene connects with you, good for you. That's fine.
One, fair enough. Two, man, as an adult, you're supposed to have a little, have some control and composure over yourself. This should not have brought anyone to tears who's got a functionally emotional.
Sarah Cook of Hey You Guys. Only the people over 40 got that joke. Blue Beetle.
How long before they remake that, by the way?
Blue Beetle has a lot of heart and entertaining scene, but it feels uninspired and dated.
Not wrong.
I was going to say, wasn't that the crux of most of the review?
Hi, friend.
No. Oh, why?
Hello, Kevin Carr. A fat guy at the movies. It's got heart. It's got pizzazz. It's got heart and some fun spectacle, but it draws from other more recognizable blockbusters that it lacks originality. That is the most Kevin Carr review I've read in a long time.
That's also a badly constructed sentence.
I was gonna say, it's like I think we're missing a semicolon in there somewhere.
Okay, the future ex Mr. Hejna, Alexis Hejna, that is. Jeremy Johns of JeremyJohns.com. Alexis Hejna's most favorite reviewer ever. She's Jeremy Johns, Alexis's boy toy. Jeremy Johns. Jeremy Johns.
Don't you love that I got my camera back?
Alexis says he's just a sexy boy. Sexy boy. He's just Jeremy Johns' boy.
I believe the modern terminology is just side piece.
Anywho, your boyfriend says, and he's gonna be
Soon to be fought in a duel to the death over honor by Alexis's husband.
I just feel like I've seen this
Andre's
movie.
not going to want any part of that.
I just Andre, you can have her. By the way, that was me as Andre speaking Romanian. I don't know Romanian, so
I don't either.
So perfect, thank you, and back to you too. I just feel like I've seen this movie before because you have, Jeremy. You have.
Yeah, this is a profoundly uninspired film.
All right. Now that I've done one of your husbands, let's find one of your wives. Oh, one of Robert Winfree's wives, Jeffrey Harris of 401mania.com, friend of the show.
Okay, I'm gonna need you to never.
I was going to say, when did Jeff become a friend of the show to suddenly becoming one of his wives? I think there's a jump there.
Why can't he be both? It would be a shame if this was the last outing of Blue Beetle because his adventures and stories show the potential to only get more interesting from here.
That was my argument. Thank you, Jeff.
And also not a helpful review of the movie. Interesting.
Yeah. Okay, for the record, the number of people who start their reviews for this with, first Latino-led superhero, like, okay, you're just copying the PR stuff at this point, and shame on all of you. That's a bad pull, and I really hope that wasn't the sum total of Jeff's point was, okay, we've got a starting point, and boy, do I think this shows more promise than we got here, because that doesn't actually tell me anything about the movie itself.
All right, so last one, and then I'm done with this. Nell Minow of Movie Mom, top critic. Blue Beetle makes it clear that the real superpowers are a devoted family and a culture of resilience and make do. Ma'am, you literally took lines of the dialogue and just rehashed them into a summary sentence. That's your whole thing. That's what that was.
That was painful.
That is just bad. Like, you are just desperate to get on the DVD box.
There was the Tick Bird review, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh no,
God,
this is our finale. I found her. Alexis Hannah's hetero life mate, Grace Randolph of Beyond the Trailer.
Yeah, you deserve that one, Mark.
I don't even know what she's doing. I get double middle fingers. I'm not looking.
You get the double.
Cool. Grace, wouldn't be the first time a woman's told me to go fuck myself this week. Like Spider-Verse and the new TMNT, Blue Beetle goes harder than expected. While a lot of attention has been given to its Latino representation, which is very well done, this is also a fun superhero origin story and a potential star turn by the Macarena.
No, it is not.
Again, Tick Bird.
Tick, tick, tock, I am the kitchen clock. Tick,
No, I'm
tick, tock, this is my wife. Boo, boo, doo, doo, doo.
Yeah, this is not a star-making performance out of Xolo.
No.
It's
all right.
I want to see more from him. I do. Okay, I don't think he's. I'll go ahead and go with you guys that I don't think he's got what it takes to be an A-lister, but I do want to see more of him. I think he has potential to grow.
I hope only laterally. He's kind of a gangly doofus.
All right, folks, that is Damn You Hollywood for the evening. Like I said, next week is Gran Turismo. Tomorrow, Javen and I will be reviewing Star Trek Strange New World Season 1.
It sucks.
Apparently, it's Star Trek before it got silly. I haven't seen Silly Season 2 yet. As for the rest of the week...
It's all silly and stupid.
Okay. Thursday, myself and Pat have abandoned the Barrera Morello trilogy.
Oh, it hurts.
I blame him. He canceled on me like 3 times.
I'm just saying it hurts because you guys would have had a ball talking about those fights.
We'll get to it eventually. But however, we are moving on to Manny Pacquiao versus Juan Manuel Marquez, the quadrilogy of fights that they had. One of which Manny Pacquiao got hit so hard he lost math, and so did the next generation of Filipinos. It was very hard punch.
Considering how many illegitimate children he has, you're a lot closer to accurate than you know.
On Friday, we've got the movies that don't suck and some that do. They're reviewing Happiness for Beginners and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. Everyone Loves a Bad Guy Saturdays looks at the career of Christopher Lee and all his villainy. And then the Metal Hammer of Doom Sundays, we're looking at Ensfarum One Man Army. And then again, we're back with Gran Turismo. And then Alexis and I are going to do something for the first time on TV Party. We're going to compare and contrast two series about the same subject. We're going to look at Dope Sick from Hulu starring Michael Keaton, and we're going to look at Painkillers. Here is the Painkiller on Netflix starring Matthew Broderick. And these are shows both about Purdue Pharma and the OxyContin, the legacy of addiction.
The opioid epidemic.
The opioid epidemic that Purdue Pharma through OxyContin caused. So we're going to look at two shows, compare and contrast them. We'll have a gay old time. Alexis Hejna, show us where you pissed from.
All right. Other than that, we just did a TV party tonight for Twisted Metal last week. Brought in two guys who actually did play the game because I hadn't. One of them, Jason Teasley. We had a lot of fun discussing that. Other than our look at Dope Sick and Painkiller, next on TV Party tonight, if I've got my list up here correctly, is we're going to be taking a look at the new season of Futurama that just came out on Hulu.
Woohoo.
I think we're like 4 or 5 episodes in. So far, pretty good. A couple episodes, I feel like the writers at Hulu are seriously lacking the subtlety that Groening's original team had.
You're not wrong.
Let's see, have you been watching it?
A little bit. I generally am waiting for it all to come out so I can binge it, but yeah.
Every now and then I just put something on in the background.
Subtlety is an absolutely dead art in modern writing.
Very
Subtlety
true.
is dead, period.
All right. So other than that, the plugs that actually do pay the bills, Honeysuckle Rose Creations, where fashion meets fandom at the intersection of geek and chic. We're getting ready to head to Colorado Springs Comic-Con. I'm leaving in 2 days. I'm so excited. Love the show. I have mentioned this multiple times, but it is still worth cheering over. Bruce Campbell is the guest of honor at the show.
Ooh.
I am so happy. Been working on a bunch of new products. I actually got a couple pieces here that I'm going to go ahead and show. These are not technically complete because I haven't added bales. That's the backing that holds a piece onto the cord. But we have a couple of brand new. These are pendants made from dominoes.
Cool. Put them on TikTok.
I will. I did.
Okay.
It's actually hilarious. It's just like a 10-second video of it with a couple sparkle things, and it got 800 views.
I remember young Alexis Hejna with her pigtails and her rosy cheeks. She walked.
My hair's never been long enough for pigtails.
Shut the fuck up. You walked onto my podcast, innocent as the day is long, and you said, "What am I supposed to fucking do with TikTok?" There, fucking jewelry. Is what she did. And we said, "But Alexis, dear heart, sweetie, this is where your audience is." And 12 years later, a slave, Alexis Hejna is on TikTok, and she's kicking ass and taking names. She's kickstarting my heart, ladies and gentlemen. And all because I said to Alexis, listen to me, Pop Radulich, you got to go where your audience is, kiddo. And your audience is on TikTok because they ain't watching much of anything else. I got the numbers.
This is why I'm the drunk aunt.
Look, a few more videos of like what you need to do is just like get a funny voice for Eddie, record him barking, selling your merch, and then put pictures of it up as make it like he's selling it.
So so every now and then, they put the filters on there that you can put your face, but they've been doing a lot where you can put your dogs in the filters.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they just did one where it's turn your dog into a Muppet. And Eddie was in my office when that came up. I'm like, okay, what the hell? And I put it on there. It's terrifying. I looked, I'm like, no, I am not putting that online. I am not subjecting people to that shit.
The Jackie likes to do the filters thing. And, and the Jackie has long, straight black hair and all of that. And like in normal real life, she looks like a woman with black hair. But I tell you, she does some of these fucking filters. She looks like Morticia Adams. Like there's been a couple of like, holy Christ, you look like a cartoon villain.
All I'm saying is that Eddie as a Muppet, he had little gold beady eyes. It was creepy.
I don't fuck with them filters. Now, however, I will do a duet with Max Caster. Those are hilarious.
Hey, I did a filter with Cleo as a member of Paw Patrol. Didn't look a damn thing like her.
Yeah, actually, your Paw Patrol one was pretty cute. All right,
it was cute, but yeah, I was like, in what universe does Cleo have that kind of coloring? Okay, so yes, we got that. I'd like to point out that I managed to host that discussion on Twisted Metal while I was recovering from COVID.
I don't know. I didn't watch. Where was the one guy from? The guy in the Robert box.
That was Josh Thino. He's a friend of mine who is actually you've actually listened to him before. He came on when Jesse and I were hosting Tripped Up Trivia. He was one of the contestants for video game trivia. Josh is the former world record holder for speed running through Maximum Carnage and the original Metroid.
Oh, that's right. You kept trying to get him a Carnage review, and we kept telling you no. That's him. Got it.
He was originally supposed to join us for the Carnage review. Something came up at the last minute, and he had to bail because I was like, no one, again, speedrunner through the game. No one knows Maximum Carnage like he did. I'm like, I need you in on this. He and I actually went.
Holding the record for the original Metroid is really impressive, actually. I'm tempted to ask which category, but
I've actually I want him. I told him he's welcome back on. If you guys got an extra spot for Gran Turismo, he knows that game pretty well too. He'd love to come back on and join you guys.
We have one spot.
I will let him know. But okay, so yes, back to the plugs that actually pay the bills. So yes, heading to Colorado Springs Comic-Con. Next month we have the Cincinnati Comic Expo. Always do well there. Just found out that Stephen Amell and Paul Bettany are going to be the guests there. I didn't know Bettany was on the con circuit. I'm kind of surprised.
I didn't know they'd taken the gun out of Amell's back to let him off the picket line.
All right, we done?
You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm not calling it X. And yes, Papa Radulich, TikTok. Our stores are always stocked on Etsy and handmade at Amazon. That's Honeysuckle Rose Creations, the intersection of geek and chic.
Robert Winfree, show us where you pissed from and do it quickly. I get a lot of that. I'm really tired.
I know, I got you. So my life's gonna suck this week.
Your life sucks every week.
I was like, more so than normal? How so?
More so than normal. So allow me to express my schedule once we get to the end of the week. So I cover mixed martial arts and professional wrestling over at 411mania.com. I'll be covering MLW stuff on Thursday, which is just soul crushing in its banality. I'll be covering WWE SmackDown on Friday, which is soul crushing in a whole other way. We'll be covering, God help me, the UFC event this Saturday is live in prime time from sunny Singapore. The prelims start at 3 a.m. my time. So I am just not sleeping. I will just be up Friday until those are done Saturday morning, right around 9:30 my time.
So I am mildly irritated. I am not going to be able to see the Usyk Dubois fight because I'm taking my kids to a 1:15 showing at Gran Turismo. And then I just found out that I have to go to Newport Richie to pick someone up, to then drive back to Tampa to drop my kids off, to then drive to go see the Freaks on Parade, which is Rob Zombie, Alice Cooper, Ministry, and Filter.
And my week concludes Sunday, right around 11 my time, with AEW All In.
Oh, God, that's right. You're covering that?
I am.
They couldn't find another pig hostage? With all the AEW marks out there, not one of them can string 5 sentences together and say, "They're the Young Bucks." No one?
Anytime they ask me to cover something, especially if it's a few weeks, like I get the last minute stuff all the time because I'm usually available. If I get asked a handful of weeks out, I assume it's because the normal guy said, no, I have a thing. And at least 2 other people said they couldn't do it. I'm usually for that far out, I'm like 3rd or 4th on the list, I think.
Wow.
So I get to make all the AEW fanboys really unhappy.
What time is All In starting on Sunday?
1 p.m. Eastern. It's 11 my time.
Right in the middle of fucking work. Ugh.
Not gonna miss anything.
Dude,
Will Ospreay is gonna try and drag the bag of doorknobs that is Chris Jericho to something decent. You don't even know what's happening on that card, do you?
I mean, I know it's in England, and I know MJF's at the top of the card.
You don't know the actual matches, though, do you?
I can look it up tomorrow while I'm at work. Finished.
So suffice to say, my weekend again. That's so Friday. That's SmackDown until it ends, and then I'm just staying up until the UFC event ends early Saturday.
Oh my god, you're gonna be terrible come Monday for Gran Turismo.
Then Sunday I've got All In, and then Monday I should be caught up on sleep by then. But that's so.
I'm Robert Winfree. This is Damn You Hollywood.
Oh, I'm not gonna do that. But that's what I've got coming up. So if you're interested in any and all of that, you can follow my coverage for those things in the MMA zone or wrestling zone of 411mania.com. If that's like your fancy at all. If you want a more truncated look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts, I host the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast every Sunday evenings, usually when I record it. So last week, this one was a review of UFC 292. Two highly unlikable, from my perspective, characters fighting in the main event, and Sean O'Malley starched Aljamain Sterling in the second round. That was kind of amusing. A comically uncompetitive co-main event, and
Weili Zhang's the shit. She fucking brutalized that girl.
That fight shouldn't have happened.
All right, you done?
Dude, you've seen the video of Zhang picking up Francis Ngannou, right?
Yes.
So if you want more details, you can find that over at that podcast. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find that show over there. And next week, Gran Turismo. I will have almost nothing to say, but We'll be here and we'll find something.
And it's going to take 2 hours to say nothing. All right, folks. Welcome
usually how it goes.
Welcome to 2 hours of nothing being said.
Can we officially call the show that from now on?
Damn You Hollywood is branded.
No, Damn You Hollywood is what we are. But I'll tell you what, that's about how we came up with Damn You Hollywood. What if it just did something snarky and we ran with it? Welcome to us.
You want to do the real cringy version of that? The heart thing?
You okay?
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Got it.
There you go.
Lower it down, guys. Come on, look.
Okay. All right.
Now that we should all feel every bit as dumb as we looked right there.
All right. This has been the Gay for Queers podcast. For Alexis Hejna, that's Robert Winfree. I'm mildly antagonistic. Be well, be safe, and be
mildly.